June 5, 1944. A BBC announcer in London reads a single line of French poetry. Nothing more. Millions hear it. Only a few hundred know that it actually means the largest invasion in history is about to begin. Hidden inside occupied France, resistance fighters drop what they're doing and start preparing to blow up railways. They've just heard the signal that D-Day is about to begin, and the Germans listening to the exact same broadcast have absolutely no idea what it means. By 1941, Britain had agents and resistance networks scattered across occupied Europe, but getting messages to them safely was nearly impossible. Radio operators could be tracked, captured, tortured. Letters could be intercepted. Couriers could be caught crossing borders. But there was one channel the Germans couldn't shut down without giving up something they also needed: the radio waves. Millions of ordinary people across occupied Europe, including German officers, were tuning into the BBC every night for real news instead of state propaganda. The Germans could jam local transmitters, but they couldn't silence the BBC without admitting to their own population that London was telling the truth. So Britain decided to hide its messages to spies, in plain sight, broadcast to everyone, understood by almost no one. Each evening, the BBC's French-language service, known across France as Radio Londres, read out a string of short, deliberately bizarre phrases. Jean has a long moustache. There is a fire at the insurance agency. Dozens of these personal messages were broadcast, one after another, in flat, unemotional tones. Many of the announcers were exiled French journalists who knew their families were listening and had no idea whether the lines they read would trigger a quiet meeting or a railway explosion. To anyone listening without context, it sounded like meaningless noise, or possibly code, which was itself useful. Even when the Germans suspected something was hidden inside, they had no way to know which phrase mattered, who it was for, or what it meant. Each phrase was a private arrangement between London and a single resistance cell, agreed upon in advance and known only to them. A line about a moustache could mean an arms drop was inbound. A line about a fire could mean a bridge needed destroying. The genius wasn't the cleverness of the code, it was that there was no pattern to crack at all. The system wasn't just for the French. The BBC ran an entirely separate operation for Polish resistance fighters, not through words, but through music. Words could be misheard. Numbers could be miscopied. But a gramophone record, scratches, tempo, imperfections, was unmistakable. A specific gramophone record, chosen and smuggled in by a government messenger, would be played at the end of a news bulletin. The particular piece of music itself was the signal. It worked almost too well. The system depended entirely on producers playing the exact right record, scratches and all, get the wrong one on air, and resistance fighters hundreds of miles away might blow up the wrong bridge. On the night before D-Day, the BBC broadcast hundreds of these personal messages in a single sitting, far more than usual, deliberately burying the real ones inside a flood of decoys. German intelligence logged every line, but that night the list ran for pages, far too many to analyze before dawn. One line, "Cradle my heart with a monotonous languor," told resistance networks across France that the invasion was hours away. Specific networks heard their own follow-up lines ordering them to start cutting telegraph wires and destroying rail lines that same night. German intelligence had known for years that the BBC's nightly messages meant something. They had transcripts. They had analysts. They simply couldn't tell which of the hundreds of lines broadcast that night were real, until Allied troops were already wading ashore at Normandy. A single line, read once on the radio, helped trigger one of the most coordinated acts of sabotage in the war, and the people meant to stop it were listening the entire time. If you enjoyed this episode, please like and subscribe for more signal history.